Chosen one, your confidence was not given, it was grown. It did not arrive in the form of praise or acceptance from the world, but in the secret hours where no one clapped, no one watched, and still, you rose. You did not borrow it from trends or gather it from admiration. You carved it out of isolation, where your questions echoed louder than any answer, and still, you stood up the next morning. There were nights you bent under pressure, unsure if your spine would hold, and mornings where only your breath reminded you that you were still chosen. That was where God whispered, not to comfort you, but to commission you. You weren't told you were great. You were made into someone who could carry greatness without needing the world to say it first. Confidence was born when your soul was tested, not in applause, but in silence. It came when you lost and still didn't quit. When you were overlooked and didn't seek revenge. When the world called you invisible, but God called you essential. You began to understand that your worth wasn't tied to being seen. It was tied to being steady. You found power not in being popular, but in being planted. You learned the strength of not explaining yourself, of letting your actions grow louder than arguments, of allowing your steps to speak what your lips never needed to. And that was where the transformation began. Not when people finally noticed, but when you no longer needed them to. You were designed to walk with a rhythm no one else could mimic. That rhythm came from knowing God breathed purpose into you before your first failure. Your setbacks didn't disqualify you, they refined you. And while others sought to be chosen by crowds, you were chosen by heaven. The root of your confidence is not ego, it is evidence. Evidence that you've endured what broke others. Evidence that your peace wasn't handed to you, it was earned through every storm you didn't run from. You don't walk like someone lucky, you walk like someone assigned. And that assignment burns quietly in your chest like a sacred fire. You don't need to shout about it, you live it. You don't need to ask for recognition. You carry too much truth to be ignored. The root of your confidence is not bravado, it is obedience. And obedience never fades, it only grows stronger in silence. You've become a man who doesn't just know who he is, you remember who called you. And because of that, no one's doubt can uproot what God himself has planted. They don't look at you the same anymore, chosen one. They glance, then pause. Some don't know why. Others feel it in their bones. It's the way you move. Not rushed, not unsure. The way your eyes don't seek approval but see through pretense. You carry something deeper than charm. It's clarity. And that clarity changes how people see you, even when they don't yet understand why. Women feel it in the way your energy doesn't beg. You are not trying to impress. You are expressing alignment. You're not peacocking. You're planted. And that unsettles what is shallow, while comforting what is sacred. Your presence invites safety because you are no longer performative. You don't sell your identity to win connection. You don't shrink yourself to fit in fragile egos. You simply show up as yourself, and that is no longer a gamble. It's a gift. Your gaze, your stillness, your posture, it all reveals a man who no longer lives by reaction. You don't blink first. You don't stammer to fill silence. You aren't loud because your spirit listens, and people around you adjust themselves because your presence reminds them how scattered they've become. You are not a mirror. They don't see themselves in you. They see what they've been missing. That's why the world calls you confident, but heaven knows the truth. You are centered, and that centeredness has become rare. It has become a magnet for peace seekers and a repellent for chaos makers. Some will call you intimidating, others will call you healing, but you will not respond to either. Because your focus is not on how they see you, it's on what you were sent to reflect. You reflect discipline, focus, grace under weight, and the kind of joy that doesn't need attention to breathe. So when their eyes linger, let them. When they whisper or wonder, let them. You no longer shrink when noticed. You no longer perform when doubted. Your gaze isn't just steady, it's free. And freedom, chosen one, is the most unforgettable kind of beauty. Chosen one, you no longer walk on shifting sand. You move with the weight of someone who has tasted chaos and chosen order. While others build their confidence on compliments, yours is anchored in clarity. You know what you are, what you're not, and what you refuse to become. This is not arrogance, it's rootedness. You are grounded in a truth that cannot be traded, not even for applause or desire. You've learned that real power doesn't come from being the loudest voice in the room. It comes from being the stillest force in the storm. You walk with gravity now. Not heaviness, not pride, but substance. People may not always agree with you, but they cannot deny your centeredness. You no longer flinch when challenged because you've made peace with who you are before the challenge. And that kind of peace? It cannot be shaken by opinions or undone by whispers. You don't speak to win arguments, you speak to release alignment. You don't posture for approval, you exist in truth. That is why your presence commands attention, even in silence. It's not volume, it's vibration. Your grounding is in God. That is what makes you unshakable. The world changes, trends shift, people applaud then abandon, but you are still here, standing in the same discipline, the same principles, the same direction. You didn't get here by accident. You built this steadiness in the dark. You bled for this posture. You buried your ego in silence and resurrected as purpose. That's why others can't figure you out. They're watching someone who has nothing to prove, only something to protect. There is no performance in your presence. You don't adjust your truth to fit comfort zones. You've learned that being grounded means being misunderstood. And that's fine, because you'd rather walk alone in clarity than be followed in confusion. You have lost much for the sake of remaining firm, but what you have gained is beyond price. Inner government. Your emotions don't own you. Your triggers don't lead you. You've become a man whose soul is governed by wisdom, not whims. And so when others walk beside you, they begin to slow down. They begin to breathe deeper. They begin to stand taller. Because groundedness is contagious. You've stopped chasing energy and started embodying it. And now wherever you go, the atmosphere responds. Not because of magic, but because you are a man who is mastered. And in a world spinning fast and falling apart, that kind of groundedness is holy. Chosen one, within the stillness of your frame burns a fire that cannot be seen but can be felt. You are not loud with it, you are not careless with it, but it's there, alive behind your eyes, flickering beneath your restraint. This fire didn't start in ambition, it began in brokenness. And instead of letting it consume you, you let it refine you. You didn't let pain turn into rage. You let pain become fuel. The fire in you doesn't destroy. It forges. It gives shape to your decisions, intensity to your presence, and warmth to those who come close in truth. That's why people linger around you, not because you flatter them, but because they feel a rare type of safety, the kind that can protect and confront. You are not predictable, but you are principled, and those principles are what guard the flame inside. You don't burn for the sake of being noticed. You burn because you are called to carry light into dark places. Some confuse your stillness with softness, but they've never seen you defend your peace. They've never watched you draw a boundary with a whisper or protect what you love without raising your voice. That's the fire of self-control. It's not that you couldn't erupt, it's that you won't. Not because you're passive, but because you're powerful enough to choose. You know your fire is not for display, it's for direction. And that kind of fire becomes sacred. There are moments when others try to provoke you, just to see if the heat they feel is real. But you remain unmoved, because you've learned that not every fight is worthy of your fire, and not every spotlight deserves your warmth. You've become selective, not in who you shine for, but in why. Your fire isn't for attention, it's for alignment. It's for mission. It's for moments that require conviction. You are not here to entertain. You are here to ignite. This is what people feel when they encounter you. They may not have language for it, but they remember you when they return to coldness. They remember your eyes, your tone, your quiet intensity. They remember the fire, not because it burned them, but because it called them higher. Your presence reminds others of what they've forgotten in themselves. That's not seduction, it's sacred restoration. And it doesn't come from effort, it comes from fire that has been trusted with responsibility. So keep burning, chosen one. Keep carrying that sacred flame. You don't owe anyone an explanation. You don't owe the world your sparks. You owe God your obedience. And that obedience has made your presence unforgettable. You are not blazing out of control, you are burning with purpose. And in a world of candles trying to impress the wind, you have become a fire that guides the lost home. Chosen one, your silence carries more stories than most men's speeches. You have endured valleys that tried to bury you, betrayals that cracked your trust, and loneliness that nearly broke your voice. But none of it erased you. It refined you. And now you walk not with noise but with testimony. A testimony etched into the way you respond, the way you listen, the way you move with both power and patience. Your presence is not decorated by loud declarations. It is defined by what you've walked through without losing yourself. You are not the man who always had answers. You are the man who learned how to stand when no answer came. While others waited for external strength, you learned to pull power from within. You became the kind of man who makes people pause, not because of your words, but because of your weight. The weight of survival, the weight of discernment, the weight of a man who has failed and yet remained faithful. You no longer wear your scars like shame, you wear them like armor, quiet, sacred, and earned. People sense something when you enter the room, though they can't quite name it. That's the residue of your process. The humility that only comes from being humbled. The strength that only comes from surrendering pride. Your story is not wrapped in perfection. It's wrapped in obedience. You didn't become confident by always being right. You became confident by surviving the moments when everything seemed wrong and choosing not to bow to bitterness. That decision became your turning point. That turning point became your presence. Now when people encounter you, they feel steadiness, they feel depth, they feel safety. Not because you are flawless, but because you are flame-forged. The testimony you carry isn't something you quote, it's something you embody. Your presence reminds others of resilience, of peace after pain, of discipline, when it would have been easier to fall apart. And that reminder changes the atmosphere, without preaching, without pushing, just being. You are a walking witness of what it means to be broken and still beautiful, stripped and still stable, forgotten and still favored. The enemy couldn't silence you, the world couldn't confuse you, because you chose alignment over applause, integrity over illusion. You let your testimony speak in your actions, in your pauses, in the discipline you now wear like a second skin. And it's that testimony, hidden deep behind your eyes, that turns heads when you don't say a word. You have become the proof that power isn't always loud. It's lived. Chosen one, you have become a mirror to the world around you. Not a reflection of trends or noise, but of truth. When people look at you, they don't just see a man, they see a standard. They see the version of themselves they've neglected. You don't preach perfection, you reveal potential. And that revelation doesn't come from ego, it comes from alignment. You are not trying to impress, you are simply being undeniably authentic. That's why some admire you and others avoid you. Because standing near someone who has mastered himself exposes every place where others have not. Your composure calls out chaos, your focus reveals distractions, your discipline highlights their excuses. You don't judge, but you reflect. And in that reflection, people either draw closer or run away. Not because you pushed them, but because your stillness showed them their own storm. You have become the man who redefines masculinity, not by dominance, but by direction. Not by taking up all the space, but by holding your space. You no longer move to be seen. You move to fulfill purpose. You've mastered the art of quiet strength, the power of being slow to speak and quick to discern. And that power isn't loud. It's magnetic, because true strength doesn't seek the center, it becomes the center by its very nature. When women are near you, they feel it too. Not lust, not fear, but safety. Your energy does not consume, it clarifies. They feel seen without being exposed. They feel respected without being conquered. Because you are not chasing validation, you're walking in confirmation. The confirmation that who you are is enough, that what you carry is sacred. And that sacredness cannot be bought, copied, or compromised. You're no longer drawn to chaos disguised as passion. You're no longer baited into performing to be chosen. You know who you are. And that knowing turns your entire being into a mirror. A mirror that doesn't flatter, but liberates. You show people what it looks like to be rooted, to be responsible, to be real. And for many, that's the most attractive thing they've ever seen. So you keep standing, chosen one. Not to be admired, but to remind. Not to be followed, but to reflect. Your confidence is no longer about how others respond. It's about how honest you've become with yourself. And in a world chasing every reflection but its own, you have become the mirror that calls the lost back to truth. Chosen one, everything about you now speaks of alignment, not surface-level confidence, not temporary charisma, but soul-deep structure forged through fire, refined in silence, and aligned with something higher than image or trend. You no longer move for attention. You move with intention. Every step you take is informed by a quiet authority, not the kind that demands submission, but the kind that commands respect because it does not sway in the face of approval or pressure. There is something unshakable about you now, and it didn't come cheaply. It came through every morning you rose when you felt nothing. Every day you trained your mind when emotions tried to hijack your actions. Every moment you chose principles over popularity. You aren't loud because you no longer need to be. You have nothing to prove, only something to preserve. That preservation is your alignment. And when your heart, your voice, your presence, your decisions, and your calling all move as one, you become a man others can't quite explain, but cannot ignore. People sense it. They may not understand it, but they feel it. Your presence carries the weight of a man who has made peace with direction. You are not drifting. You are not easily swayed. And in that steadiness, people find clarity, not because you preach it, but because you embody it. When you speak, you are heard, not because you talk louder, but because your voice has been anchored in integrity. You don't just say things to sound wise, you say things when you have something real to offer. This alignment creates peace around you, not the peace that avoids conflict, but the peace that outlasts it. You are no longer moved by opinions because you've been shaped by obedience. When God gave you direction, you stopped asking for consensus. You stopped waiting for permission to be who you were created to be. And that's when your life began to stretch wide with authority, not because you forced it, but because alignment always expands influence. Now your time is guarded. Your energy is filtered. Your attention is deliberate, because you know alignment doesn't thrive in noise, it thrives in discipline. And this discipline is now written into your posture, into your tone, into the calm way you walk into a room and bring weight without words. It's why men either imitate you or resent you. It's why women either relax around you or retreat from you, not because you threaten, but because you reveal. You reveal what's possible when a man is led by truth instead of trends, when he's moved by purpose instead of performance. And that revelation, chosen one, is a gift the world didn't expect, but desperately needed. Chosen one, your presence no longer asks for room, it creates it. You do not enter spaces hoping to be seen. You are the space that others feel before they understand it. Your energy is not about volume, it's about vibration. You've become a frequency of peace, power, and precision. And that frequency is unmistakable. You don't chase conversations, you don't over-explain yourself, you don't grasp for moments. You walk in, and the room remembers something. You've stopped diluting your power for comfort. You've stopped shrinking your insight for politeness. You've learned that presence isn't about being dominant, it's about being anchored. And the deeper you've anchored yourself, the higher you've risen in the eyes of those around you. Not by trying, but by being. Your presence has matured from attraction into conviction. And conviction, when carried quietly, disrupts confusion without confrontation. People try to describe you, but they run out of words, because what they feel is not charm, it's charge. A divine charge wrapped in quiet discipline. A holy posture that doesn't flex but focuses. Your presence now exposes what's shallow, not to shame, but to invite transformation. People feel safer around you, not because you speak well, but because your energy says, I know who I am. You are no longer looking to impress. You are walking as one who already belongs. This presence didn't come from titles. It came from testing, from resisting the pull to be everything to everyone, and choosing instead to be true to the call that shaped you. You are not everyone's comfort, and that's fine. Because your presence wasn't designed to entertain. It was crafted to align, to bring order, to reflect structure, to quiet storms not with shouting, but with stillness. And that stillness now radiates through your shoulders, your gaze, your pauses. You don't need a throne to feel royal. You don't need a spotlight to radiate worth. Your presence is enough. And what people feel around you is more than presence. It's permission. Permission to exhale. Permission to rise. Permission to come clean. Because you don't demand vulnerability. You model it. You don't lead with fear, you lead with weight. The kind of weight that says, I don't need to dominate this room. I am the room. And in a world full of men seeking attention, you have become the rare soul who anchors it. Chosen one, you no longer live for what's immediately visible. Your eyes have been trained to see beyond what others call reality, and because of that, you no longer waste your steps on shallow destinations. You move like a man who knows where he's going, not because someone drew you a map, but because the vision was carved into your soul before anyone believed in you. This vision isn't fantasy. It's not built on illusions or the need for applause. It's built on alignment, obedience, and clarity. You are no longer chasing opportunity, you are walking in assignment. And because you know what's been entrusted to you, your path no longer shifts with every voice or vibe around you. You see what others miss. You see the cracks behind the polish. You see the root beneath the fruit. You see through the noise of trends and the veil of pretense, and that sight has made you sacred. It's why you don't compete, you create. You don't rush to be understood because you understand something deeper. You are guided by something higher than desire. Your vision is not just where you're going, it's who you're becoming. And it shows in your walk, in your posture, in your silence. You don't flinch anymore when others question your direction because they don't carry your burden, they don't bear your mantle. You've learned that clarity is lonely, that when God reveals something to your spirit, the world may not recognize it. But you didn't wait for their approval, you moved anyway. You sacrificed anyway. You refined your discipline not because of the rewards, but because of the responsibility. Your vision required you to outgrow certain habits, certain conversations, certain environments. And you did. Now, your steps are calculated, not cautious. You don't wander, you build. Your eyes are fixed. And those who try to distract you only waste their energy. Because what's inside of you is louder than what's outside. You don't need external confirmation when internal fire is enough. That fire has made you magnetic. People don't just follow you because you speak well. They follow you because they feel you're going somewhere real. And in a world full of blind ambition, your vision is what sets you apart. You no longer need to chase beauty. It follows purpose. You no longer need to chase peace. It's in your path. You no longer question if you're chosen. You live like you remember. Because every time you doubted, God reminded. Every time you fell, purpose reached down deeper. Every time you were left behind, it was to preserve you for the long path, the true assignment, the unseen kingdom. And now you carry vision not as a hope, but as your identity. That identity moves you differently. That identity watches time, not trends. That identity doesn't beg to be seen, it prepares to reign. Chosen one, now you carry weight. Not the weight of fear, not the burden of performance, but the sacred pressure of legacy. There is a gravity in your presence that comes from all you've endured, all you've buried, all you've survived and refused to waste. You are not heavy because of ego, you are heavy because of meaning. You walk with intention, and that intention disturbs superficiality. You are no longer easy to distract because you've counted the cost. You know what it took to get here. You've paid with years, with silence, with hunger, with loss. And now, your very existence carries consequence. People feel it. The ones who used to dismiss you now lower their voices when you speak. The ones who once overlooked you now search your face for clarity. You've become the man whose opinion matters, not because you asked for that role, but because your presence has been tested. They don't admire you for perfection, they trust you because of presence. Your life isn't decorated with shallow achievement, it's infused with earned weight. And in a time where words are cheap and image is currency, your weight is truth incarnate. You no longer chase influence, you embody influence. You don't seek validation, you give it, when deserved. And when you withhold your energy, people feel the void. Because you no longer show up just to be included. You show up when you're called. You're not desperate to be everywhere. You're prepared to be exactly where you need to be. And when you arrive, the atmosphere shifts. Because you bring more than presence, you bring permission. The kind that says you don't have to fake it here. The kind that says, we're going to tell the truth now. This weight is not a performance. It is the natural result of a man who has mastered himself. You've cried in silence. You've trained in the dark. You've walked away from what felt good so you could walk into what is God. And now your existence doesn't ask for applause. It delivers clarity. You are no longer fighting for attention. You are fighting for alignment. And that makes you dangerous to mediocrity. It makes you sacred to those who want depth. It makes you unforgettable to women who have never felt the security of being in the presence of a man who knows what he carries and doesn't abuse it. So walk with that weight, chosen one. Don't shrink. Don't explain. Don't trade depth for attention. Let them talk. Let them wonder. Let them watch. Because your weight is not for their entertainment, it's for their awakening. And when they encounter you, they won't always know what to call it, but they will remember the stillness, the fire, the clarity, the vision, and the unshakable weight of a man who didn't arrive by accident, but by alignment. Chosen one, the silence they sit in now is not the silence you gave them. It's the silence they found when your absence refused to echo like all the others before you. It's the silence left behind by something real. Because you weren't a fleeting thrill. You weren't a seasonal high. You were a presence so complete that it demanded stillness even when the words were gone. Now that silence speaks to them louder than your voice ever did. It reminds them of the man who looked them in the eye and didn't flinch, who listened and didn't interrupt, who stayed even when their chaos spilled out like fire. And when they remember, they call you a heartbreaker. Not because you ever deceived them, but because you didn't need to. You were the man who didn't chase, didn't beg, didn't mold yourself into what they expected. You came as you were. You stood whole, and in that wholeness, you dared them to meet you there. They weren't ready, and that unreadiness haunts them more than the end, because you didn't end it. They did. They did. Not with their mouths, but with their fear. Fear that they weren't enough, fear that they'd lose you, fear that they'd have to rise into the version of themselves that could truly stand beside you. They retreated not because of you, but because of what you reflected. And now they sit in the wake of that mirror, knowing they met someone who didn't need them to change, but would never pretend for the sake of comfort either. You weren't just another romantic chapter. You were the testament that they had seen greatness and let it pass. And that reality is far heavier than heartbreak. Because heartbreak heals. But regret, that lingers. You see, you didn't make them fall in love with a fantasy. You made them fall in love with possibility. And that possibility now follows them everywhere. In the man who holds their hand, but not their truth. In the conversations that feel full of words, but empty of meaning. In the touches that don't shake their soul like yours did with a single glance. It's not you they're haunted by, it's the feeling you gave them. The one they now know is real, but may never feel again. You didn't walk away with bitterness, you walked away with grace. Because you knew, chosen one, that love without alignment isn't love. It's attachment. And you're no longer bound by the need to be needed. Your masculine energy is no longer driven by validation, it is anchored in sovereignty. That sovereignty is why you leave peace behind even when you say nothing. That's why women feel safe in your storm, and men look at you with both confusion and admiration. You don't force respect, you embody it. And once someone has felt that kind of presence, all pretense feels like starvation. She calls you a heartbreaker now. But what she means is he was the first man who didn't lose himself to love me. And the heart that breaks in the face of that kind of devotion isn't breaking from abandonment, it's breaking from awakening. Because love is not about possession, it is about permission. And you gave her permission to become more than she was. You didn't need her to be small, you would have walked with her into expansion. But she wasn't ready, and so you walked alone. Not out of punishment, but out of purpose. Because your love, chosen one, is no longer a place for hiding. It is a threshold, and only those ready to rise may cross. Chosen one, your legacy isn't the trail of broken hearts behind you. It's the trail of awakened souls. They may not all say it aloud, but they remember. They remember the way your silence steadied their breath, the way your eyes spoke more devotion than 1,000 declarations, the way your energy entered a room first and left last. You weren't just a man they loved. You were the man who transformed the way they understood love. And transformation is painful. That's why they called it heartbreak. But heartbreak wasn't the end. It was the invitation to begin. You didn't shatter them. You showed them their own reflection with such brutal clarity that the pieces they thought were whole began to fracture. And when the falsehood fell away, what remained was the part of them that had always been sacred, but never touched. You didn't touch their body to claim them. You touched their truth to remind them. And that reminder echoes now in every corner of their life. Not because you're perfect, but because you were present. And presence is the rarest form of intimacy. You weren't the lover who tried to control her emotions. You were the man who held space for them. You didn't need her to shrink so you could feel powerful. You invited her to expand and were ready to stand beside her when she did. But she wasn't there yet.